you too. Hide and seek. It had taken much less time than I thought. All the terror, the despair, the shattering of my heart. The minutes were ticking by more slowly than usual. Jasper still hadn't come back when I returned to Alice. I was afraid to be in the same room with her, afraid that she would guess, and afraid to hide from her for the same reason. Alice? She didn't react when I called her name, but her head was slowly rocking side to side, and I saw her face. Her eyes were blank, dazed. My thoughts flew to my mother. Was I already too late? I hurried to her side, reaching out automatically to touch her hand. Alice! Jasper's voice whipped, and then he was right behind her, his hands curling over hers, loosening them from their grip on the table. What is it? He demanded. She turned her face away from me, into his chest. Bella, she said. I'm right here, I replied. Her head twisted around, her eyes locking on mine, their expressions still strangely blank. I realized at once that she hadn't been speaking to me, she'd been answering Jasper's question. What did you see? I said, and there was no question in my flat, uncaring voice. Jasper looked at me sharply. I kept my expression vacant and waited. His eyes were confused as they flickered swiftly between Alice's face and mine, feeling the chaos. I felt a tranquil atmosphere settle around me. I welcomed it, using it to keep my emotions disciplined, under control. Alice, too, recovered herself. Nothing really, she answered finally, her voice remarkably calm and convincing. Just the same room as before. She finally looked at me, her expression smooth and withdrawn. Did you want breakfast? No, I'll eat at the airport. I was very calm, too. I left my hair down, swirling around me, covering my face. The peaceful mood Jasper created I know, like, covering your face. Kind of monster. They won't see me!
It's like the emo bangs I had in 9th grade.
We parked on the 4th floor of the huge garage. I led the way, for once more knowledgeable about my surroundings than they were. We took the elevator down to level 3. We sat in the long rows of chairs by the metal detectors. Jasper and I was pretending to people watch, but really watching me. The minutes passed and Edward's arrival grew closer. It was amazing how every cell in my body seemed to know he was coming, to long for his coming. That made it very hard. I found myself trying to think of excuses to stay, to see him first, and then make my escape. But I knew that was impossible if I was going to have any chance to get away. Several times Alice offered to go get breakfast with me. Later, I told her, not yet. I stared at the arrival board, watching as flight after flight arrived on time. The flight from Seattle crept closer to the top of the board. And then, when I had only 30 minutes to make my escape, the numbers changed. His plane was 10 minutes early. I had no more time. I think I'll eat now, I said quickly. Alice stood. I'll come with you. Do you mind if Jasper comes instead, I asked. I'm feeling a little... I didn't finish the sentence. My eyes were wild enough to convey what I didn't say. Jasper stood up. Alice's eyes were confused, but I saw to my relief, not suspicious. She must be attributing the change in her vision to some maneuver of the trackers rather than a betrayal by me. I pretended a lack of interest in the first few airport cafes, my head scanning for what I really wanted. And there it was, around the corner, out of Alice's sharp sight, the level 3 ladies' room. Do you mind? Asked Jasper as we passed. I'll just be a moment. As soon as the door shut behind me, I was running. Outside the far door, it was only a short sprint to the elevators, and if Jasper stayed where he said he would, I'd never be in his line of sight. I didn't look behind me. That's gonna be awkward for him, though, when he's like, man, it's been a while, and he has to figure out... Around the corner, the elevators were waiting, and I dashed forward. I squeezed in beside the irritated passengers and checked to make sure that the button for level 1 had been pushed. It was already lit and the doors closed. As soon as the doors opened, I was off again, to the sound of annoyed murmurs behind me. I jumped out the automatic doors, nearly smacking into the glass when they opened too slowly. A tired-looking couple was getting their last suitcase out of the trunk of a cab. I jumped out of the shuttle and ran to the cab, sliding into the seat behind the driver. The tired couple and the shuttle driver stared at me. I told the surprised cabbie my mother's address. I need to get there as soon as possible. 5821. My voice sounded strangled. The cabbie looked at me, nervous that I was having an episode or something. Here we are then. He was anxious to get me out of his car, probably hoping I wouldn't ask for my change. I ran to the door, reaching up automatically to grab the key under the eave. I unlocked the door. It was dark inside. Empty. Normal. I ran to the phone, turning on the kitchen light on my way. There on the whiteboard was a 10-digit number written in a small, neat hand. I held the phone to my ear with a shaking hand. It rang only once. Hello, Bella, the easy voice answered. That was very quick. I'm impressed. Is my mom all right? She's perfectly fine. Don't worry, Bella. I have no quarrel with her. Unless you didn't come alone, of course. Light, amused. I'm alone. I'd never been more alone in my entire life. Very good. Now, do you know the ballet studio just around the corner from your home? Yes, I know how to get there. Well then, I'll see you very soon. I hung up. I ran from the room, through the door, out into the baking heat. I felt so slow, like I was running through wet sand. I couldn't seem to get enough purchase from the concrete. But at last I made it to the corner, just another street now. I ran, sweat pouring down my face, gasping. The sun was hot on my skin, too bright as it bounced off the white concrete and blinded me.
I thought she loved the blinding sun.
She used to until Edward suddenly greens in. When I rounded the last corner onto Cactus, I could see the studio, looking just as I remembered it. The parking lot in front was empty, the vertical blinds and all the windows drawn. I couldn't run anymore. I couldn't breathe. Exertion and fear had gotten the best of me. As I got closer, I could see the sign inside the door. It was handwritten on hot pink paper. It said the dance studio was closed for spring break. I touched the handle, tugged on it cautiously. It was unlocked. I fought to catch my breath and open the door. Terror seized me so strongly that I was literally trapped by it. I couldn't make my feet move forward. And then my mother's voice called, "Bella? Bella?" That same tone of hysterical panic. I sprinted to the door to the sound of her voice. "Bella, you scared me. Don't you ever do that to me again." Her voice continued as I ran into the long, high-ceilinged room. I stared around me, trying to find where her voice was coming from. I heard her laugh, and I whirled to the sound. There she was, on the TV screen, tussling my hair in relief. It was Thanksgiving, and I was 12.
Dun, dun, dun!
I turned slowly. He was standing very still by the back exit. So still, I hadn't noticed him at first. In his hand was a remote control. We stared at each other for a long moment, and then he smiled. He walked toward me, quite close, and then past me to put the remote down next to the VCR. I turned carefully to watch him. "Sorry about that, Bella, but isn't it better that your mother didn't really have to be involved in all this?" My mother was safe. She was still in Florida. She'd never gotten my message. She'd never been terrified by the dark red eyes and the abnormally pale face before me. "Yes," I answered, my voice saturated with relief. "You don't sound angry that I tricked you." "I'm not." My sudden high made me brave. What did it matter now? It would soon be over. Charlie and Mom would never be harmed, would never have to fear. "Would you mind very much if I left a little letter of my own for you, Edward?" He took a step back and touched a palm-sized digital video camera balanced carefully on top of the stereo. A small red light indicated that it was already running. He adjusted it a few times, widened the frame. I stared at him in horror. "I'm sorry, but I just don't think he'll be able to resist hunting me after he watches this, and I wouldn't want him to miss anything. It was all for him, of course. You're simply a human who, unfortunately, was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and indisputably running with the wrong crowd, I might add."
This
is so
genuinely
gross.
sounds like a serial killer.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's a serial killer.
It sounds like I'm a true crime junkie. So this
It's
is
like call is from inside the house.
yeah, it's very serial killer in that moment, and now when it's like I've got it filmed just so I can stir up more hatred. It's like, oh, no.
He took another step toward me till he was just inches away. He lifted a lock of my hair and sniffed at it delicately. Then he gently patted the strand back into place, and I felt his cool fingertips against my throat. He reached up to stroke my cheek once, quickly, with his thumb, his face curious. I wanted so badly to run, but I was frozen. Couldn't even flinch away. "No," he murmured to himself as he dropped his hand. "I don't understand." He sighed. "Well, I suppose we should get on with it, and then I can call your friends and tell them where to find you." There would be no quick ends like I'd been counting on. You're an idiot. Anyway, my knees began to shake, and I was afraid I was going to fall. He stepped back and began to circle, casually, as if he were trying to get a better view of a statue in a museum. His face was still open and friendly as he decided where to start. Then he slumped forward into a crouch I recognized, and his pleasant smile slowly widened, grew till it wasn't a smile at all but a contortion of teeth, exposed and glistening. I couldn't help myself. I tried to run. As useless as I knew it would be, as weak as my knees already were, panic took over, and I bolted for the emergency door.
It cracks me up.
He was in front of me in a flash. I didn't see if he used his hand or his foot. It was too fast. A crushing blow struck my chest. I felt myself flying backward and then heard the crunch as my head bashed into the mirrors. You shouldn't hear a crunch with your head. The glass buckled, some of the pieces shattering and splintering on the floor beside me. I was too stunned to feel the pain. I couldn't breathe yet. He walked toward me slowly. "That's a very nice effect," he said, examining the mess of glass, his voice friendly again. "I thought this room would be visually dramatic for my little film. That's why I picked this place to meet you. It's perfect, isn't it?" I ignored him, scrambling on my hands and knees, crawling toward the other door. He was over me at once, his foot stepping down hard on my leg. I heard the sickening snap before I felt it. I don't like it.
The new faces that everybody just made in that moment were great.
But then I did feel it, and I couldn't hold back my scream of agony. I twisted up to reach for my leg, and he was standing over me. Oh, did she like sit up? Because I was like, why is your leg up here?
She's doing it like mountain climbers.
I was like, what? Okay, I guess she sat up. Anyway, I twisted up to reach for my leg, and he was standing over me, smiling. Would you like to rethink your last request? He asked pleasantly. Wouldn't you rather have Edward try to find me? He prompted. No, I croaked. No, Edward, don't. I am not a good person. I am not a good person. I would have sat at home and been like, Edward, you take care of this crazy guy after me.
Any hooch.
No, Edward, don't. And then something smashed into my face, throwing me back into the broken mirrors. Over the pain of my leg, I felt the sharp rip across my scalp where the glass cut into it, and then the warm wetness began to spread through my hair with alarming speed. I could feel it soaking the shoulder of my shirt, hear it dripping on the wood below. The smell of it twisted my stomach. Through the nausea and dizziness, I saw something that gave me a sudden final shred of hope. His eyes, merely intent before, now burned with an uncontrollable need. No matter his original intentions, he couldn't draw this out much longer. Let it be quick now was all I could hope as the flow of my blood from my head sucked my consciousness away with it. My eyes were closing. I heard, as if from underwater, the final growl of the hunter. I could see, through the long tunnels my eyes had become, his dark shape coming toward me. With my last effort, my hand instinctively raised to protect my face. My eyes closed, and I drifted. End of chapter.
The next chapter is called The Angel.
Oh,
Who that is?